Magic Tea House, Book Number 50, A Merlin Mission. Hurry up, Houdini, by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 9, The Real Story. After the curtain closed, Jack could hear the joyful crowd leaving the theater. Mr. Dewey, Mr. Wilson, Butch, and Hank rushed from the wings to congratulate the Houdinis. Mr. Dewey actually went down on his knees to thank them. "You have made my audience very happy," he exclaimed. "And when my audience is happy, I am happy too. Great show, great show." "Man, he's really lost it," Jack said. Annie laughed. "Come on, I want to tell them great show too," she said. But as Jack and Annie started toward the Houdinis, some teenage boys rushed on stage ahead of them. "Sorry, boys," said Mr. Wilson, stepping between the boys and the Houdinis. "Mr. Houdini is exhausted from his magnificent performance. You'll have to buy a ticket and come back again." "Come on, Harry, let's get you two out of here," Mr. Dewey said. As Mr. Dewey whisked Harry and Bess backstage, Jack and Annie followed them. Mr. Dewey ushered the couple into their dressing room. He hurried in after them and closed the door. Annie was about to knock, but Jack stopped her. "Don't bother them yet," he said. "Let them relax a minute first. We'll see them when they come out." "Good idea," said Annie. Jack and Annie waited outside the Houdini's dressing room door as the crew cleared all the hooligan fans off the stage. They waited as Hank and Butch took away Houdini's cabinet, his milk can, and his steamer trunk. They waited as Mrs. Crenshaw collected the bird and rabbit cages and carried them away. They waited as Mr. Wilson swept the floor and turned off the stage lights. "They should be relaxed by now," said Annie. "No kidding," said Jack. He tapped softly on the door. There was no answer. Annie knocked louder. "Bess? Harry?" she called. Still no one answered. Annie tried the handle, but the door was locked. "They're gone," said Mr. Wilson, passing by Jack and Annie in the hall. "Gone?" said Annie. "Yes, both the Houdinis left a while ago," the stage manager said. "Left? How?" asked Jack. He and Annie had been watching the door every minute. "Mr. Dewey took them through the secret exit out of the stars' dressing room," said Mr. Wilson. "It goes through the basement and out of the theater. Otherwise, they'd be mobbed by all the crazy fans." "So they're really gone?" said Jack. "They don't call Harry the master of escape for nothing," Mr. Wilson said. "You'd better change out of your costumes and get going too. We'll be locking up the building soon." Jack and Annie walked down the hall and into their dressing room. "I can't believe it," Annie wailed. "We didn't even get to tell them great show." "Worse than that, we didn't get to find out a secret of greatness," said Jack. He held up his finger with the ring of truth. The ring didn't glow all night. "Well, I guess all we can do is get dressed and go look for them," said Annie. Jack and Annie quickly changed out of the tuxedos and back into their street clothes. Jack grabbed his bag and put his watch in the pocket of his pants. "Come on, hurry," said Annie. She and Jack rushed out the back door of the theater. They ran down the dark alley, past the row of garbage cans, and out to the street. Surf Avenue was still bright with lights and just as busy as before. The sidewalks were crowded with lots of people. The old-timey cars and horses and buggies filled the cobbled street. "They could be anywhere," said Jack. "They could even have gone home." "Let's try Luna Park," said Annie. "Why would they go back there?" asked Jack. "Especially after getting chapped on their trip to the moon." "I don't know. There's lots they might want to do there," said Annie. She gasped. "Ice cream," Jack and Annie said together. At the same moment, they'd each remembered Bess saying, "Ice cream always comes after the show." "To the ice cream stand," said Annie. "And fast," said Jack. Jack and Annie took off up the street, dodging people along the way. They ran to the tall arches, where ticket sellers and chariots were still welcoming people into Luna Park. "Admission 10 cents each," one said. Jack and Annie dumped the rest of their pennies into the ticket sellers' hands. Then they took off, dashing up the broad avenue, weaving around couples and children and barkers on stilts and unicycles. When they came to the ice cream stand, they found a line of people waiting to buy cones. Panting, Jack looked up and down the line. The two Houdinis were nowhere to be seen. Jack's spirits fell, but Annie poked him. "What?" Jack said. Annie pointed at the terrace. Jack looked up. Harry and Bess were sitting on a bench side by side, holding ice cream cones. Their big hats hid their faces. Jack laughed. "Now I get it. They wear those hats so fans won't recognize them," he said. "Well, they can't fool us," said Annie. "Come on." Annie and Jack headed over to the bench. When they were close, Annie put her finger to her lips. Jack understood what she meant. Without greeting Harry or Bess, Jack and Annie sat down next to them. "Great ice cream, huh?" said Annie. "Great," said Bess, not looking up. "Would you call it the greatest in the world?" asked Jack. Tilting her head, Bess peeked out from under the brim of her hat. She laughed loudly. "Hey, Harry, look!" she exclaimed. "It's our little friends." Harry raised his hat, then laughed too. "The crazy kiddos," he said. "So what's the story? What the heck were you two doing up on that stage tonight?" "We just love to perform," said Annie with a giggle. "We just love to make fools of ourselves," said Jack. "Making a fool of yourself is a brave thing to do," Harry said, smiling. "That's what Aristotle once told us," said Annie. "More or less." Jack glanced at the ring of truth. It wasn't glowing. "Mr. Houdini," someone said. A man stood in front of the bench. He started to clap. "Oh dear," murmured Bess. "You were unbelievable tonight," the man said. "I never saw anything like what you did." Other people turned to look. They recognized Harry too, and began gathering in front of the bench, telling him how great he was. Harry finished his ice cream cone. Then he stood up and started shaking hands with his admirers. Bess shook her head and sighed. "He's always nice to people," she said to Jack and Annie, "no matter how tired he is." Harry's fans kept asking questions. "How do you do it? How did you escape from those handcuffs? How'd you get out of that milk can?" "First of all, let me assure you again that I have no supernatural powers," said Harry. It's all illusion. These skills just happen to come easily to me. Always have. I remember when I was a kid. Jack looked at the ring of truth. Nothing. That's not the real story, Bess said quietly to Jack and Annie, her eyes twinkling. What is the real story? Annie asked her. Harry's always worked very, very hard, she said. He's worked all his life. When he was a little boy, he sold newspapers and flowers. He performed in a neighborhood children's circus. A few years later, he hopped chains and tried to get work in Milwaukee, Kansas City, New York. He practiced coin tricks and card tricks for hours every day. He read every book he could find on magic. He practiced and practiced and practiced. Those skills did not come naturally to him. They came from hard work and more practice than most people could endure. Jack thought about how he and Annie had only done their magic tricks once, with the help of the magic mist. No wonder they'd failed so spectacularly the second time. So his secret is hard work? Said Annie. You've got it, kiddo, said Bess. But that's not such a big secret, is it? Anyone would have to work hard to be truly great at something. Yeah, they would, said Jack. Oh, wow, Annie whispered to Jack. She pointed at his hand. Jack looked down and smiled. The ring of truth was finally glowing. Chapter 10. Best escape act ever. Annie grinned at Jack. Done, she whispered. Done, Jack agreed. Now we can leave. Harry and I have to go too, said Bess. I want to get him out of here before he attacks the wrong types. Hooligans and crazy fans? Asked Annie. You got it, said Bess. Harry, she called. Time's up. Harry excused himself from the crowd of people and walked back to the bench. Thanks, sweetheart, he said. I couldn't escape. He winked at Bess, then looked at Jack and Annie. They think I do truly magical things, but it's not true. It's all just entertainment. It's all tricks. Harry's never seen anyone do a trick he couldn't do himself, said Bess. That's a fact, said Harry. Nothing, ever. Amazing, said Annie. Amazing, yes, but it's also a great sadness, said Harry, frowning. The world's lost its wonder for me. I would be so happy just once to see a bit of magic I could never do or never explain. Really? Said Jack. Yes, but it's not going to happen, Harry said with a sigh. Well, I'm ready, my love. Let's go home. Yes, let's, said Bess, standing. She looked at Jack and Annie. Which way are you two going? Just down that way, Jack said. And then he had a great idea. He smiled at Annie. Let's walk them as far as the Japanese tea garden. Annie's eyes lit up. She seemed to know what Jack was thinking. Good plan, she said. Sure, let's all go together, said Bess. Harry, Bess, Jack and Annie all stepped down from the terrace and started up the broad avenue. The band was playing After the Ball is Over. The crowd had thinned out. The lights were starting to dim. What a fantastic park, said Harry. Did you try many rides? The pirate ship or the navy ship sailing the deep ocean? The Arctic ship? No, but we've done all those things before, said Jack. Did you get to experience the cyclone attraction too? Said Bess. The volcano? The big fire? Actually, we've experienced all those things too, said Jack. Really? Said Bess. So you must have been in this park a long time? No, I was talking about real life, Jack said matter-of-factly. My sister and I travel in a magic tree house to different times and places and have lots of adventures. Annie grinned. Jack's telling the truth, she said. We've been all through time. Harry and Bess chuckled. Sounds like a good act, said Harry. It does, doesn't it? Said Bess delightedly. Where else do you perform your act besides Coney Island? We don't really perform this act for anyone, said Annie. It's usually a secret. But we'll show it to you, said Jack. Lucky us, said Bess, winking at Harry. The tree house is parked in the Japanese tea garden, said Annie. You want to see it? It'll only take a minute. Sure, why not? Said Harry. Bess and Harry followed Jack and Annie over to the wooden gate that led to the Japanese tea garden. They followed them through the gateway, up the pebble path, and over the small arched bridge to the cluster of trees. There, said Annie. She pointed up at one of the trees. A tree house? Well, how about that? Said Harry. He sounded genuinely surprised. I never knew that was here. That's because it's only been here for a few hours, said Annie. You want to watch us take off? Asked Jack. Take off? Said Bess. Yep, the treehouse is going to take us back home to Pennsylvania now, said Jack. To a time more than 100 years from today. In the future, Annie added. Bess and Harry laughed. You two might be the looniest kids in the world, said Bess. Or the best actors, said Harry. Wait and see, said Annie. She held out her hand. Bye, Harry. It's been great knowing you. Harry shook Annie's hand, and then he shook Jack's. Bess grabbed each of them and gave them big hugs. You two kiddos are great, she said, giggling. You're just my kind of screwballs. They all laughed. Then Jack and Annie climbed up the rope ladder. Inside the treehouse, Annie picked up the Pennsylvania book, and she and Jack looked out the window. Bye! They both waved to Harry and Bess. The Houdinis waved back. I wish we could go home, Annie whispered as she pointed to a picture of Frog Creek. Behold a miracle! Jack shouted down to Bess and Harry. He clapped 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Then the wind started to blow. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. The Frog Creek woods were quiet and peaceful. The early evening light filtered into the treehouse. Jack and Annie were wearing their own clothes again. Now that was the best escape act ever, said Annie. Jack smiled. I wanted to make Harry happy. We showed him something he'll never be able to explain. Jack looked at his watch. As always, no time had passed in Frog Creek while they'd been on their mission. 6 minutes to get home, said Jack. Yep, but first we have to write down our new secret of greatness, said Annie. Jack pulled out a pencil and picked up the paper that was still lying on the floor. And under the word humility, he wrote, hard work. Hard work, said Annie. That's so simple. Yep, said Jack. Sometimes the truth is amazingly simple. He placed the ring of truth on top of the paper. And I'll leave this too. He took the little bottle from his backpack and placed it beside the ring. For next time. Mist gathered at first light on the first day of the new moon on the Isle of Avalon, said Annie. Jack closed his backpack. Okay, that's it. Let's go. Mom's hot dogs are waiting. Greatest in the world, said Annie. The two of them climbed down from the ladder and headed through the cheese. You know what? Said Annie. What? Asked Jack. You know how we were supposed to learn a secret of greatness from the great Houdini? Annie said. Yep, said Jack. And we kept waiting for Harry to say or do something to make the ring glow, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. But in the end, we learned the secret from Bess, not Harry, said Annie. You're right, said Jack. So I think Bess was the great Houdini that Merlin sent us to find, said Annie. Why do you think Bess was great? Asked Jack. Well, she was kind and funny and friendly, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack. Like you. Me? Said Annie. Huh. She looked a little embarrassed. Well, also she was a loyal person. She was loyal to Harry. That's true, said Jack. She was loyal like you are, said Annie. Me? Said Jack. Yep, you came right back when you realized I needed help, said Annie. Even though I'd made you really mad. Well, you were loyal too, said Jack. You didn't hold a grudge because I'd left you. Me loyal? Said Annie. And kind and funny and friendly? You think I'm all that? Seriously? Me? Okay, forget it, said Jack, grinning. No, I'm going to remember all those things, said Annie. And the next time you're mad at me, I'm going to remind you how great I am. How loyal and kind and funny. Okay, that's enough, said Jack. Bye! He took off running. He ran out of the Frog Creek woods, across the street, and down the sidewalk. Wait! Slow down! You can't escape from me, called Annie. She ran after Jack as fast as she could and caught up with him before he reached home.